What's up, guys? So I know it's been a while since I've posted a video. I've had to unfortunately shut down my editing rig because of my work situation and where I can actually work. So I haven't been able to use my editing computer to do anything. So that's one of the main reasons I've not posted for a while. But big news is I got a new car. This is a Ford Fiesta ST 2016. And while this video will not be of the same quality as usual, I did want to show a few things based on a common problem that a lot of these cars have, which I unfortunately have as I found out after buying it, which is a water leaking issue. So I'm going to show you guys how to look for these water leaks, how to potentially fix them, and where to focus your efforts. All right, so the primary location of this water leaking or intrusion issue is the rear hatch. This is where most of the issues arise. Now, there will sometimes be an issue in the front seats as well, or above the front seats, or potentially above the rear passenger footwell. Okay, those are much less common than the rear hatch. I will cover those as well, but I'm going to focus on the rear hatch first because that is the primary or usual suspect for where water is leaking in. Okay, now off the bat, I will say this. Most likely, your problem, if you have one, is tied to your sunroof. Okay, now before you take apart the whole headliner to get to the sunroof, which is a bit of a job, it's not terrible. I will just say this as well. It's not a terrible job. It can be done rather quickly and easily. However, it is still taking apart half your car. There are a few things you can check before you look at that. All right, so probably the first place you'd want to check, the easiest place to check, is behind the rear taillights. So the taillights here are held on simply by two T20 Torx screws that are here and here. Okay, so you take out those two T20s, and then the whole assembly will just sort of pull out. The lights will still be attached. The electrical wiring for the lights will be attached. We just unclip those, twist them counterclockwise, and they will pop out. You can pull the whole thing out. And then what you'll have left is this over here. Okay, here's your electrical wiring. Now, there's a couple places you want to check behind the taillight first. Okay, the first is where the T20 Torx screws screw into that hold the taillight in. There's these little rubber grommets. Okay, now as you see here, I've covered them in some gray Permatex RTV, okay, a gasket maker, because this is one of the places where mine was leaking from. So you can't really tell, but if you stick your finger in behind the hatch, inside here, you can kind of see that white piece. This is a sort of white, maybe anchor, I guess you could call it, where it screws into. The gap between that anchor and the body of the car, okay, will sometimes let water in. And so you might want to just put some gray Permatex or gasket maker around these in order to seal it in. There's one on the top and one on the bottom. Okay, so that's the first thing you want to check. The second thing you want to check are these grommets over here, which is where the little plastic push pins go into for the taillight. If you look behind the taillight, 1 and 2, these simply push in to those little grommets. And so those could also be potential sources for leaking water. So same thing, you're going to want to put some RTV around those and seal them up nicely. Third place you want to look behind the taillight is this big rubber grommet, I guess, right, where the electrical wiring comes out of. Okay, this simply presses into the car like this. Okay, there's a large hole here, and this should prevent water from getting in there, but they can get brittle over time. They could be just misaligned, so you're going to want to check it out. Mine was not leaking, so I did not put any RTV over it, but you could definitely check that out. The fourth and final place behind the taillight is this little piece of tape here. Okay, now this is tape that I put on myself because my original piece of tape was sort of peeling. Okay, if you look at this right here is the original tape on this particular side. Underneath the tape are some body holes. Okay, now this tape can start to peel. This is what mine is like right now. It's very loose. Okay, the bottom is even worse. Okay, I'm going to have to go through and fix this. So the way you want to do this, okay, there's a couple ways. One, you could just put new tape over it. But the way I did it was I pulled the tape off, and then I put the tape in behind the hole, the old piece. Okay, I used that to sort of support up some RTV, which I then put over the hole. Okay, and then I put new Gorilla Tape over it. Okay, and it's also a smart idea to shingle it in a way. If you look here, I started off with this bottom piece, then put them going up like this. This way the water will go over them and not get caught in the ridges. So those are the things you want to check when you're behind the taillight, okay? The way to see if the water is coming from here is, again, you will find water on the floor of your hatch here, okay? My giveaway was that I had about 2 inches of water in my spare tire well. If it's leaking through those grommets I just showed you, you'll see it in these holes right here, right? This is where those little anchors go into. As you can see, I also put some gasket maker on these. They will eventually find their way down into this part of the hatch. It'll pool up over here, potentially making it down into the spare tire well. So what you can do, kettle like this or any other thing that has water in it, a hose even, and then just pour it over where these things are, okay? Pour it over and then look inside. If you see water dripping out, you know that's where your leak is. If it's dry, then you're good to go. So work your way around the car, take off both taillights, and check there, okay? If any water is seeping through these grommets or this tape, you know to fix that. This is a very easy fix. Second location you're going to want to check is behind your bumper. This is very similar to the area behind the taillights. Similar ideas. You have these grommets, again, here, these anchors. Mine particularly was leaking through, mostly, through this particular one. This is where the bumper screws into, again, with the T20 Torx bit, okay? You can diagnose this without taking off the bumper. You can just simply pour water over it and then look behind. This is the one that shows up right here. However, to fix it, you're probably going to have to take the bumper off. But ultimately, it's two T20 Torx bits. There's a few push pin retaining clips here that hold this fender liner in place. There's a single 8mm screw over here. And then underneath the car, there are 2 more clips on either side. And then, I don't know if you can see this, but then there are also these little threaded bolts that come through the car, and the bumper will screw into these as well. The second place you're going to check is all those tape holes. Again, this one here, same thing. The tape was peeling, so I redid the tape and used some RTV on the edges. Third place you want to check are these vents here. Allows for pressure, air pressure to escape out of the cabin. Well, what can happen here is that these little flaps can be broken or they can get brittle, and they'll allow water back into the cabin. So this is definitely someplace you want to check. Mine look fine. You can pull them out pretty easily by just kind of pushing on them like this and unclipping them, and then they will pull right out. So you can check those as well. Final, and the one that also ultimately ended up being a source of leak for me, are these water drain holes right here. Okay, this connects to the sunroof. Now I'll explain that a little bit more, but this is where it ends. Okay, so if you see this clogged especially, or just broken off entirely, definitely something to look at. I will talk more about the sunroof in a second, but this is where that ends. And then the final and arguably most likely culprit for your water leak, if you have one, is the sunroof itself. Now, the sunroof will not be leaking necessarily from the actual glass over here, okay? Now, the sunroof design is designed to allow a little bit of water through. It's not a perfect seal. And so water will find its way past the sunroof. That's normal, or at least how Ford intended it to be. However, inside the sunroof, or the sunroof assembly, which is this up here, this whole metal assembly that spans the sunroof, and goes all the way to the back of the car, there is a track on which the sunroof slides, and then there's also a trough on which the water that makes it past the seal will then head out to the drains. If you look up in here, you can see this is the track right here, and then right here to the left where this hose connects to, it's not connected right now, but it will connect right here. This is where the water that makes it onto the trough will then connect to this hose, which will then exit the car down over here at that hose, which you can see I removed the flap so you can see it very clearly. Connects to here, comes out here. So the first thing you want to check is whether that hose is clogged. Okay, that turned out to be my problem. There is one other issue, which I will address in a moment here, which could be due to the actual sunroof assembly. However, it's much simpler to just check this hose. So the way you want to do that is you want to pull this hose off of here. It'll be connected to here, okay? Just sort of press fit onto there, like so. You pull it off, okay? And then, honestly, the best way I found is just blow air through it, okay? So blow through it, and then you should hear a pretty clean flow of air. And as you can see, there is nothing, or you can hear, there's nothing blocking that hose. You also want to visually inspect to see if there's anything in the way. Also where it connects to up here. That one's clean, okay? You can also just pull the hose off, okay, like this, tilt it upwards, and pour some water into there, okay? The water should flow very freely out of this drain hole, okay, which I will demonstrate now. The reason why this can be an issue is that if this is clogged, if this hose right here is clogged, then what will happen is the water will back up on this tray and then spill over outside of the trough into the track and then into the cabin. You'll notice it because it'll sort of either stain your headliner, if you have especially if you have a white or beige headliner, tan one, you will see it much more clear. I have a black one, so it's harder to see, but it was definitely wet when I noticed it. You will also eventually find water leaking down onto here. I found it, this is where I found it, on top of the strut mount, okay? So the first thing you'd want to do to check this is pull your headliner down a little bit. You can do so. If you see here, there are these two holes. The headliner just clips into here. You can get it down from the back by pulling those two out and then sort of pulling this trim out of the way, okay? This trim just clips in right here. You pull it out of the way, and then that will allow you to pull the headliner down, okay? If the headliner is being a little stubborn, a tool that I found to really help is this sort of pry tool that has sort of a half-moon curve around it, okay? You can kind of get behind the headliner and just sort of pry it out very gently so you don't have to actually remove these panels all the way. Once you do that, you can then inspect the hose in the trough here. You can pull the hose off by just pulling on it, and it should come off. And then it's clipped in a few places right here by these white clips, okay? All you gotta do is pry on these with some sort of pry tool from the back here, a clip remover tool. You have 1, 2, 3, this black one here, and then 4. And then from there it goes into this hole here, and it comes back out down over here. So you can remove all that, and you can pull the hose out, and then try to blow some air through it or clean it out. Mine was gunked up with some sort of, I couldn't really tell what it was, almost like a hardened silicone. May have been the silicone lubricant they used on the track of the sunroof, which had over time sort of coagulated and hardened. That's at least what I think it is. So I cleaned that out and solved my issue in doing so. However, as we will see, there is one more potential cause of this, which is that there is a tray, okay, in the sunroof assembly, which diverts the water from the track to the trough to then go to these drain holes, okay? If that tray is unclipped or broken or clogged, that will not happen. So you're going to have to check that as well, and I'll show you how to do so. One final thing before I close this section here is you're going to want to check the front drain holes as well. And there is a similar hose inside of the front of the car, which, as you can see, goes along this section here. Same situation. If you just open the sunroof, though, this one you can just see from the top. So you open the sunroof. I won't do it right now because my car is all taken apart. But if you open up the sunroof, look from the top, you should be able to see the entry hole for this drain plug. And so what you can do is you can open your sunroof, right? Open this all the way up. Then you look inside. You can pour water into there, and it should drain from all 4 corners. If one corner doesn't drain as well as the other 3, or 2 corners don't drain or whatever, you know that's your issue. So start with those first. So as you can see here, I have my headliner on top of my car instead of inside it. So in order to get to the sunroof tray, you unfortunately do have to remove the headliner. Now, as far as headliners go, this is a pretty straightforward one, okay? There are a few electrical connectors here, as you can see, all right? There will be a few clips, which I will show you, and there is the line for the rear washer, window washer, okay? However, once you unclip and potentially close off those lines, it should come pretty easily out. It's not too complicated. I'll show you how to get to it right now. Again, it's already out, so I'll just show you where things are inside the car, but hopefully this will help someone who's having this problem. First thing you're going to want to do is unhook your battery, okay, the negative terminal, because you're going to be unhooking a bunch of stuff, and usually it's just a good idea to have the battery unplugged for that, just to make sure that no error codes show up or everything still works when you plug it back in. So it's a 10 millimeter nut right here. You just unscrew that, the battery will come right out. Then you're going to want to get inside your car. We'll start with the front and work our way to the back of the car. And then the first thing you want to do is you're going to have to remove your sun visors. Okay, these are held on by 3 T20 bolts. Again, okay, there's one connector here. There's a small little connector which stays attached to the sun visor. It is this one right here. Okay, and then the other side has a 2 bolt connector, which are again 2 T20s, and they go right here. So you unscrew those. Again, the headliner will still be there. You unscrew those T20s, the whole thing pops right out. Real simple. Next, here you would have your dome lights as well as the switch for your sunroof if you have it. Okay, to get this off, basically this would sit into here, just sort of clips into this little yellow plastic thing. You're going to want to get a pry tool, plastic pry tool like this, or a credit card, slide it in behind and just sort of pry it out. And here is the dome light assembly itself, which, as you can see, we have the electrical connectors on the back, and it is just press fit into that little yellow plastic thing. You just pry it out, it'll drop down. Here are the electrical connectors. There are actually 3. So this one you can get from the front. These 2 will connect to the back of the dome light assembly. Next up, you're going to have to remove these A-pillar trim pieces. Okay, there's one right here, which I've left on my dash. These simply press in. Again, your best friend here is a plastic pry tool. Okay, you're going to want to start to sort of pry gently in different parts of it. Okay, I found that the best way to do it is to first pry out till it loosens, pry a little more, and then pull up. And that is what loosened it for me. It takes a little more force than what feels comfortable, but mine did not break any tabs. So just be careful, work your way around it, make sure it's loose on all the clips, and then pull it out. Next, you have to disconnect the rear window washer. It connects here on the driver's side. This is one side, the other side stays on the headliner, which I will show you again in a moment here. So just pull it out, pull the tube out from here, okay, and then set this side aside, okay? And then you're also going to have to remove that drain plug I mentioned earlier, which over here goes about here. Again, just pull it off. This right here is where it connects. Pull it off, and there you go. Back on the headliner, this will all be attached to the A-pillar, but right now it's on the headliner. So here you have the rear window washer plug hose. You're gonna want to plug it off. I use these pliers here because it will leak fluid. Okay, so clamp it off so it doesn't connect, so it doesn't drip. And then you also have this electrical connector, which connects, okay, you just press on the tab in the back here, okay, you pull it straight out. And both of those things are, again, on the A-pillar. You can see the electrical connector right here, okay, and then the hose, like I said, connects here. Both the hose and the electrical connector will be clipped in to these little holes right here. You can't see this one here, but the holes are going straight up. We got 2 more right here, okay? So again, these are just those little push pin clips. Use a pry tool. This is the one that I had the most luck with. This one, this little pry tool trim remover. You just put it in there and pop the clips out. They will come out. They take a little bit of effort to come out. Some of them will maybe not break but deform, but you can get them out. And then you'll do the exact same thing on the passenger side. However, there is no rear window washer tube. There's just the drain tube, and then there is that electrical connector. So one less thing to do on the passenger side. Once you have those connectors and tubes all unplugged, you can then start working your way towards the back. Here on the B-pillar, again, the headliner will tuck into this. Now, as you can see here, I did not actually remove this B-pillar trim. That's because I was able to use that little half-moon pry tool to sort of gently lift the headliner and pull back on the B-pillar trim at the same time with my hand and sort of just untuck it from there. This prevents me from having to mess with all of this because this is actually pretty involved. You got to take off this seatbelt cover right here. You have to pry out the whole B-pillar trim. It's a lot more work than just pulling back on this and sort of prying out the headliner. Again, very carefully, but you can do it. I did not damage mine at all when I did it. Before the headliner comes out, you'll also need to remove this little rubber weather stripping. Okay, this goes basically just around the sunroof, and you can just pull it straight down. It comes out very easily. You just sort of get your finger behind it or a pry tool and just pull it right down. Okay. As you work your way from the front over to the middle of the headliner, there's nothing holding it in besides the sort of friction fit here, which is where the B-pillar goes. Okay, so you have to deal with that, as I just mentioned. And then as you get to the rear, you do have one more hose to unclip and to clamp off. This is for the rear window washer. So same thing, unplug it. I'll show you where that goes in a second. Clamp it off to avoid spills. Okay, you can leave the rear dome light completely as it is. You don't have to touch that at all, just leave it. Okay, and then the final two clips, I'm missing one, but I will find it. It's on my floor somewhere. There are these two black push pin clips. Let's see if I can get a focus going here. There we go. These just simply push into the roof of the car, which I will show you right now. So those push pins, they go right here. 1 and 2. Again, same thing, use that little pry tool to just pop them out. And then the rear window washer clips in or attaches over here on the end. Okay, this is where the headliner will go. It'll attach to there. So same thing, just detach that. Okay, a little bit of fluid might come through, as you can see here, so you might want to clamp it off. Mine was not too bad, especially if you just kind of tilt it up. Okay, the one on the headliner was leaking more for me. And then the final thing, if you've not done so yet, is to again sort of pry the headliner away from the C-pillar trim right here. Okay, again, I removed mine. All right, they stay attached to the seatbelt unless you take the seatbelt off, but you don't have to. I removed mine because I wanted to find the leak, but you probably don't have to. If you use this little half-moon tool that comes in a lot of the cheaper trim removal tools you can find at O'Reilly or AutoZone or Amazon, right? You just kind of put it behind the trim, pry the headliner out very carefully using your fingers as well if you need to, pull back on this trim, and then the whole thing will come out. Headliner will drop down, fold down your rear seats, push back your front seats and recline them a little bit, and then pull it out the hatch. Okay, that is the best way to do it, is to pull it out the hatch. You have to tilt it a little bit, angle it to the side, pull it out. It's probably a two-person job. You could do it by yourself, but it's a lot easier with two people. And then you can put it either on the floor or, as I did, just on my roof. Now, here we are inside the car, and we're ready to remove our sunroof tray panel. Okay, it is held in by a few bolts, okay, which I will show you in a moment here, and then by 3 plastic clips. That white one right there being one of them. There's one on the opposite side, and then there is a hidden one underneath the sunroof motor right here, which you cannot see, nor can you disconnect it, by itself. But when you just pull down the sunroof, once you have everything else disconnected, it will just sort of pop out. So the two rear bolts, for some reason, are 8mm, whereas the front ones are 10. So you have one here and then one on the opposite side. There is a sort of retaining clip on the top side of this bracket, so that might come loose, or you may have to hold it in order to unscrew it. So take off this 8mm. Then working your way to the front of the sunroof, you're going to have these 10mm. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them, along with the 2 8mm. Okay, and as you can see, they just kind of work their way around the sunroof. These 10mm, they should pop out pretty easily with just a ratchet. They're pretty loose. Okay, so you loosen all of those. Okay, Then this is where you definitely want a helper. It helps. What I found to work the best for me is if I lay on my back, on the rear seats folded down, I can hold up the sunroof with my hand. I can put my hand here on the various little metal brackets. Okay. Then have your helper stand on either the passenger or driver's side door through there, and they can reach through and hold it up with their hand there to give you a little extra support. Once you have all the bolts taken out, pull down, and you should hopefully feel these two white plastic clips unclip. They will unclip from the car before they unclip from the sunroof. So you just pull down, they'll unclip from the car. Okay, there'll be one left under there, most likely. Okay, the one that's hidden. Pull down, it'll come down. Be ready for it because it'll hit you on the head. Okay, ask me how I know. So be ready for it to come down. Then once it comes down, what you can do is you can hold your knees up like this and balance the whole assembly on your knees. So you put these two sort of wings or extensions on each knee. Okay, you hold the top with your hands. Okay, and then you can have your helper help you pull it out, or if you do have to do this by yourself, you can probably just sort of shuffle your way out. Again, being very careful because you do have the actual glass of the sunroof to protect. Okay, it's not super heavy, it's actually pretty light, but you do want to be careful. Again, a helper really helps with this step. Once you get all those things out, you can pull it out, and then you can start to inspect the tray and the troughs, which I will show you right now, in order to see where the water may be pooling up. Alright, so here is the sunroof assembly now fully pulled out of the car. There are a few things you're going to want to check once you pull it out in order to see whether this is your issue for the leaking water. So the first thing you want to check are these drains. There are 4 drains. Here you can see one down here. This is the driver's side front. Then here we have the driver's side rear. And then there are 2 more on the opposite side. These drains allow the water that makes it past the sunroof. Now, the sunroof is not meant to seal perfectly because then it wouldn't move, right? Some water will make it through the seal. When the water gets through, it then goes onto these drains, okay, and then drains out either the front of the car or the rear of the car. The first thing you want to check are if these drains are clogged. And let me show you a quick way to do that. So you want to lay your sunroof down at a bit of an angle and then take a kettle of water and pour some water into the trough. And it should, as you can see, make its way out of the drain hole. Okay, so you can then repeat this for all of the drain holes and make sure that the water is freely flowing. If it is not, inspect here as well as inspect inside the hole to see if there's anything clogging or preventing the water from going through. The second thing you're going to want to check is the operation of this tray right here. This is towards the back of the sunroof. Now this tray allows for water that makes it past the sunroof seal to actually make it onto the trough where it's supposed to go to the drain hole. The purpose of this tray, as I've said, is to make sure that it does not actually go into the track here. This is the track where the sunroof actually slides on, which should be lubricated with a silicone lubricant. Water getting in there obviously is not good, but also the water will not make it onto the trough and will eventually make its way down here where it will spill down onto your headliner and will pool up on the headliner and the rear of the car. So this tray, the way it works is if water goes onto the sunroof when it's raining or something, or a car wash, right, water goes on the sunroof, it'll then make its way onto the tray, as you can see here, and it will eventually make its way down to the trough, not on the track, and it will spill out over here. Show you again. Water on the sunroof, onto the tray, into the trough, out the drain hole. Okay? What can happen is the tray can get disconnected. So it clips in here and here on the opposite side. And these clips right here have a tendency to either just come loose or potentially sometimes break. So first make sure that this is clipped in properly. One poster on the Fiesta forums mentioned that something you could do is drill a small hole through here and then insert a cotter pin to hold it in place if it keeps loosening itself. Mine was actually in place, which then led me to inspecting the drain holes more, which is where I found the drain hole or the actual drain tube to be the problem. It's also a good idea while you have it out to check all the seals. There is supposed to be a hole here, that is normal, okay? But just make sure that all the seals are nice and supple, okay? And it would not be a bad idea while you have the thing out to spray a little more silicone lubricant inside the track here just to make sure that the motor is properly lubricated. Alright, and here we have the job completely done. I've got the sunroof back in, I've got the headliner back in. Now a few quick notes about reassembly before I let you guys go. The first thing is when you're putting the sunroof tray back in, there is actually a torquing order for the bolts. You can find it online. I will post a picture of it right here on the video. But essentially you want to start from the front and work your way towards the back. There's also a torque spec. It is 80 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, for those small bolts that connect the sunroof tray to the car. Then you're going to go ahead and reattach your headliner. As you can see here, I've got it all put in nicely without any issues. The only thing that was a bit fiddly was getting that sunroof seal, this little rectangular rubber seal, back on. It took a little bit of fiddling, but it did eventually go in. And now I have got a nice, non-leaking, dry Ford Fiesta ST. Now I really sincerely do hope that this video helps someone in their quest to drying out their Ford Fiesta. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, drop me a message in the comments below, and I will try to help you out in any way I can. As always, thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing, and I'll catch you next time.